Twitch drops for Marvel Snap are going on right now, so be sure to drop by twitch.tv/Jeff Hoagland, where I'm going to be streaming a ton for the next few days to get your free credits and variant. So TA Day, Marvel Snap gamers. Second Dinner took some bigger swings this week that I really appreciate, so let's go ahead and dive on into the details and talk about what it could mean for the metagame of Marvel Snap moving forward. The Nerf Bat is taking a crack at 3 different metagame staples this week, starting off with Darkhawk, who's going from a 4-0 that gets +2 for every card in your opponent's deck to a 5-4. Second Dinner notes that Darkhawk has constantly flirted with individual performance rates at the top of the metagame and has fueled multiple decks over the month to similar heights. They wanted to wait and see how Blob would impact this powerful card before they make a change, and it's very clear at this point that Darkhawk is still fairly fantastic post Blob. They are making this change to freshen the landscape, though there is a chance that they could revert it at some point down the line. Second Dinner also goes on to say that they do understand that Zabu is a key part of Darkhawk's strength, but they also say that Zabu's not responsible for all of it, and there are other Zabu decks that are healthy in the metagame. There's no sugarcoating this change. It is a big downtick in Darkhawk's power level almost assuredly. He's going to be joining the ranks of Devil Dinosaur and Ronin as a 5 energy card that's ongoing, that scales up his stat line based on a various condition. It's worth noting that Devil Dinosaur and Ronin have both really struggled to be competitive in Marvel Snap lately, and this new Darkhawk is likely to do the same, I would assume. The note about other Zabu decks that aren't playing Darkhawk being reasonable and healthy is kind of interesting and weird to me personally. Obviously, I don't have access to Second Dinner's data, but all of the public-facing tracker data that we have actually has Darkhawk performing worse than Zabu does as a card on average, while also being significantly less popular. That last bit talking about Zabu and Darkhawk does at least Second Dinner acknowledging that they understand that maybe Zabu is problematic, but I also agree with their statement that there's a lot of Zabu decks that aren't playing Darkhawk that are really good, so I don't know that I really expect this change to move the needle on the cat at all, while I do expect it to likely gut the hawk. Overall, from a perspective of keeping things fresh, this will definitely create a little bit of churn in those Darkhawk decks that exist in the metagame. I don't know if it's going to be a good change or a bad change in the long term, but it will definitely be a change. And like Second Dinner indicated, if it ends up being a detrimental impact to the metagame, they could always undo this at a future impasse. Our next nerf this week is another fairly sizable one. Lockjaw is going from a 3-2 up to a 4-5 while still retaining its text box of after you play a card here, swap it with a card in your deck once per turn. Second Dinner starts their justification out by noting that Lockjaw has always been a little bit of a design risk. It not only cheats on energy, but it effectively draws cards from your deck, adding a level of consistency that can be a little bit dangerous in a game like Marvel Snap with such small deck sizes. Second Dinner then goes on to say that not only has Lockjaw felt a little constraining in their future designs, but current designs in Hela and Thanos have been leaning on Lockjaw very heavily for added consistency and putting lots of stats into play. They're aware that moving Lockjaw up to a 4 cost takes away an entire turn of swap, so they are giving it a sizable power increase to make up for that a little bit, but their goal is to rein in this effect a bit because it has been quite powerful for a little while now. Overall, I think this is probably just a good change. I think reining in a card like Lockjaw to make it slightly less obnoxious is a good thing for the game overall. And who knows, maybe the cats and dogs will rule together because the new 4 energy card means potentially a new friend for Zabu. Our third and final nerf this week before we dig on into the 5 different buffs is Forge, going from a 1-1 to a 2-2 while retaining the on reveal, give the next card you play +2 power. Second Dinner notes that since they moved Forge to a 1 energy card originally, it's been a linchpin effect in multiple decks and is frequently in the top 5 most played cards in the game. It has really dwarfed the other 1 energy cards in terms of power level, and I completely agree with that. Forge is essentially a 3 power 1 energy card that offers scaling with effects like Brood and Deadpool and others to great effect, while essentially having no downside in and of itself. Overall, I think this change is a very welcome one, and I'm hopeful that making Forge less energy efficient will be another step towards taking the potential output range that the Destroy deck has and bringing them back down to Earth a little bit so decks can potentially compete with Destroy more consistently without having to resort to tech cards like Shadow King and Shang-Chi. Our first buff this week is a big change. Adam Warlock is going from a 2/0 up to a 5/4 while maintaining his incredibly powerful effect of after each turn, draw a card if you're winning here. It's hard to overstate just how potent drawing extra cards is in a game like Marvel Snap. Drawing even a singular extra card over the course of the game takes you from 75% to see something by turn 6 to 83%. And if you draw 2 extra cards, you gain another 8% of equity up to 91%. And Second Dinner acknowledges this in their breakdown. They say that as a 2 energy card, Adam Warlock has a lot of issues and limitations in how much they can really do with it, because giving even 1 point of power scales up the odds that it's going to draw multiple cards over the course of the game. At face value, this 5 energy Adam Warlock gives you 1 extra card, which is still an 8 extra percent, which is a big deal for decks that are looking for particular effects. But if you play other energy acceleration effects, Corvus, Psylocke, Wave, Electro, suddenly you can talk about getting into drawing 2 or maybe even 3 extra cards over the course of the game, and that becomes a really huge swing potential. Overall, I have to say I absolutely love to see Second Dinner taking a big shot like this in an over there update. Even if they miss and 5/4 Adam Warlock ends up being a non-factor in our games, the 2/0 Adam Warlock was already a non-card, so this is an all upside change, potentially adds a new playable strategy to try and execute in Marvel Snap, one that you can even get rewarded for building your deck around appropriately. Our next 2 buffs are to 1 energy cards, with Second Dinner hoping to diversify that slot a little bit in addition to pulling power out of Forge, moving it back to a 2-drop. The first of these is AntMan, whose ongoing effect is going from +3 with a full lane to +4. AntMan will now join the ranks of Titania as well as Martyr as 1 energy cards that add 5 points to the board. And while who knows if this is enough to make those Khazar Swarm style decks enough to be relevant, it's definitely a strict upgrade to what it was before, and a one that is welcome at that. Our next 1-drop getting buffed is a change I absolutely love to see. America Chavez is going from a 2/3 down to a 1/2, who will still give the top card of your deck +2. Second Dinner acknowledges that they're making this change to Chavez in part because they're sending Forge to a 2 cost. Their effects are similar, but Chavez was a little bit weak at 2 energy, while Forge was too strong at 1 energy, and they're hoping that the outcome of this swap overall is 2 reasonably healthy and playable cards that are good in slightly different situations. We round out our buffs this week to a couple of cards that definitely could use the help. Swordmaster is going from a 3/6 up to a 3/7, and Vulture is going from a 3/3 that gets +5 when it moves to a 3/3 that gets +6 when it moves. Both of these changes are welcome. Neither of these cards are really seeing any amount of competitive play, and while there's a chance that this number movement doesn't make a big difference, it's definitely those kind of free stat points that I think are good to get people to at least retry out these cards in strategies where they'd otherwise been forgotten. Overall, I'm pretty happy with this over there update. The changes to Lockjaw and Forge should hopefully give us some breathing room against the decks that have been the top performing in the format, while buffs to cards like Adam Warlock will give brewers like myself new things to experiment with as we head on into the new season. Speaking of that new season, it's also going to be bringing with it a patch on March 5th shortly before it rolls out, so these are not the only card changes we're getting in the short term. Hopefully we'll have some other interesting things to look at with some more text box changes when that patch drops next week. As always, if you enjoyed my breakdown, snap the like button. Thanks for watching to the end. Happy snapping, folks.